to entertain ourselves. Okay, when we were back on the farm, sugar, the only way we had of entertaining ourselves was to tell stories. Sometimes it would be a little raunchy.
You, PaPa?
But sometimes it would be clean, but it would get a laugh. The only means of it, entertainment we had at first, was we would whistle to ourselves. Be out in the field walking home from work late in the evening, we'd whistle. Try to whistle a little tune. And then my father would tell stories, entertain us. And my mother occasionally, not very often.
She was too busy.
She was too busy cooking
and having kids.
And so we had to entertain ourselves. And this is one of the stories that I remember. They had a guy named, as a drummer, he was a peddler. And his name was Peter Duncan. Every fall, after they had produced a crop, this is up in New England, wasn't down in the South. We had a Watkins man down south. This was a different time, kind of a drummer. He sold odds and ends to farm people that didn't get to town very often. He had a big old wagon, covered wagon, and a team of mules. And he would make his rounds after the crop was harvested. And so he learned people who had the best coffee and the best place to eat. So one day he pulled up with his mules. He had a place to sleep in that wagon too. If he's out somewhere, he just went to bed. Put his old mule beside the wagon, give him a few oats, and he'd get crawling in the wagon and go to sleep. But anyhow, he go to this farm one day, and he got there around 11:30. People were always hungry for news. They didn't have any news, no radios. It wasn't even invented then. TVs wasn't even a thought yet. So we had none of that kind of stuff. No refrigeration, or nothing. So he drove to his house, and the farmer was there. Got company?
No. They just walked down the street? Okay. Sorry, PaPa.
He drove to his house, and the drummer, he started to tell him the news and so on down the line. And the women, to entertain themselves and to have something to do, they learned how to smoke a cob pipe. And they'd get together every now and then and they'd light up their pipes and smoke a pipe of tobacco. And so the lady, they met in the kitchen because they always had a warm place. And you get in the kitchen, sit around the table, and she decided it's time to start cooking dinner. before she started cooking dinner, she cut up a handful of tobacco out of a old twist of tobacco leaves, collected up and thin. She put it in a pipe, picked it down, lit it up. She had a long old stem in it, hung out her mouth about that long. And she lit it up. And then she pulled out her pan where she kept her flour to make biscuits. And she looked over on the shelf, what they call a safe. That's what they used to put, you remember safe? She had a jug of buttermilk there. She was making buttermilk biscuits. And my mother used to make those. They were good. And she was putting that in there, she mixing it up with her hands. And she's smoking her pipe back in there. And directly, a little slava began to trickle down into the bowl of her pipe. And the drummer, he had cut off his compass. And he was watching that. And it built up. And it was just floating around, shaking around like that. And he was wondering what was going to happen to it. And the old farmer, he spoke up and said, "Mr. Drummer, are you going to stay and eat dinner with us?" He said, "What'd you say?" He was so intent on looking at that. And he said, "Are you going to eat dinner with us?" He said, "Well, it all depends on how the drop falls." I never did write a theme about that one.
Oh boy.
But I think about I tell them Randolph, I was laying in bed. I woke up about 4 o'clock, which I do quite often. I read an article about the today's paper about old timers. As they get older, they can't sleep this sound. And so I woke up, I went and got into my chair, and I got to thinking about stuff comes into my mind that's been sitting on the shelf for years. And I hadn't thought about it, you know. Even names will come off of the shelf that I hadn't thought about. So all of a sudden I started thinking about stuff coming off the shelf in my mind. And I thought about that old joke. And I had a big laugh. I sat there and just laughed and laughed by myself. And about the one about the bones. And there's such old stuff as that there. And I said, well, this is not all bad. I said, I'm getting a laugh out of it. This makes me feel better.
Yeah. You've been pulling a lot of stuff off the shelf lately.
I've been pulling it off for the last few years. Names that I hadn't thought about in a coon's age. I thought about one story not too long ago. I had forgotten about it, but I pulled it off the shelf. And it was about two of my cousins. They lived a little piece from us, about a quarter of a mile. They were our first cousins. They were my father's sister's children. They were our first cousins to us. They were a little older than us because she was older than my father. He was the baby of the family. So she raised her family. But they had a family reunion. And Hubbard and Harrison was the two oldest boys. They got in some kind of argument. and Herbert had got his pocket knife and stabbed Harrison
Oh.
in the arm here or somewhere and made a big long gash. And they had to end up taking him to the doctor. And I was thinking about that family. They was a rough family. They was always fighting and shouting and carrying on. As compared with our family, Mama didn't put up with that. She had discipline. My daddy didn't. He let her do all the discipline. And, so I thought about that. Then I thought about another one. John, my brother. He was just younger than me. But he was the comedian of the family. He's always trying to do something funny or tell something funny. So one day for dinner we had something special. I know it was somebody's birthday. I don't know, it might have been mine. But Mama would always try to fix something special, some kind of a little pie or some cookies or something. And she'd made them that day. And there was just enough to go around. There was one or two for each plate. And John was sitting right beside me. I was sitting here. He was sitting right there. And he got to tell him a story. And he told me, he said, Ivy, look out there at that bird. And I know what he told me about the bird. But while I was looking at it, trying to see the bird, he ate my cookies.
And you fell for it.
And we had a old 3-prong fork. Had the 3 prongs on it. And I had it. And he got up and started running. And I threw it and hit him right in the hip.
Oh! And that's what you did to Richard.
That fork I threw at you that time?
And flopping up.
No, I don't remember that. No, I don't remember that.
And my mother, she got all excited about it. And the old 4-pounder just fell out. It didn't go all that deep. It just fell out. And but my daddy told me I had never remembered him giving me a licking, giving me a whipping. He says, he says, you can't get away with that. He said, I'm going to have to give you a licking. So he took me out behind the house. And he had a little switch or something there. He gave me a 3-4 licks on the leg. Said, don't you do that anymore. And that's the only time he ever whipped me that I remember. And he did it mostly to please my mother.
You don't want to do it.
Well, throw it. PaPa, you want any of this food? You want any of this food?